During the National Day holiday, my girlfriend suddenly told me she had to work overtime and couldn't travel with me. I felt sorry for her being so tired, so I bought a ticket overnight to her city, planning to give her a surprise. When I opened the door, there stood her first love. Baby, who is it? My girlfriend was on the balcony hanging up a man's clothes, casually asking. That made my heart grow colder. When she saw me, the expression on her face slowly cracked. I smirked and slapped the bouquet right onto her first love's face. The house is mine, I said, and now I'm taking it back. Both of you, get out. Liu Ryan suddenly had to work overtime during the National Day holiday. Even the trip we had planned together a month ago had to be canceled. When I got the news, I immediately booked a high-speed train ticket to the city where she lived. I didn't tell Liu Ryan in advance. I just stood at the door of her apartment holding a bouquet, ready to surprise her. But what I didn't expect was to be caught so off guard when I saw Liu Ryan holding hands with another man. That man was Yiming, Liu Ryan's first love. Liu Ryan was carrying a bag of snacks in her hand, while Yiming had a basket of groceries. They walked closely together, looking like a sweet, married couple. At that moment, Liu Ryan finally noticed my presence. She hurriedly let go of Yiming's tightly held hand and awkwardly walked over to me. Chen Yi, you're here. Why didn't you message me beforehand? I suppressed my emotions and replied indifferently. I wanted to surprise you, but seeing Liu Ryan like this now, it seemed like there was only shock, no surprise. Sure enough, Liu Ryan furrowed her brows, muttering, "This is too sudden." Yiming, standing beside her, spoke up. "Ryan, Brother Joe came all this way to see you. Why are we talking outside? Let's go inside." He casually pulled out the key from his pocket and naturally opened the door to invite me in, as if he were the owner of this place. I almost forgot. This apartment was one I bought for Liu Ryan, just because she once said, "This place looks nice." I had to talk endlessly to get the landlord to agree, paying a high price to secure this apartment. Now, it seemed I had become the outsider. Once inside, Yiming sprawled on the sofa playing with his phone, while Liu Ryan, on her own, put on an apron and started cooking. I couldn't believe it. The woman who never touched any housework in front of me, that pampered princess, was now actually in the kitchen. Liu Ryan quickly prepared for dishes and a soup, but each dish contained seafood. She warmly served porridge to Yiming, complaining playfully, "Drink it while it's hot. You can't go a meal without your seafood porridge, spoiled prince." Yiming affectionately ruffled her hair. "Baby, you're so good to me." They flirted with each other for a while, finally remembering I was still there. Liu Ryan noticed I hadn't touched my chopsticks for a while and asked, "Chen Yi, why aren't you eating?" I calmly replied, "I'm allergic to seafood." For a few seconds, the living room was enveloped in awkward silence. Yiming quickly showed concern, asking, "Brother Joe, why didn't you say something earlier? You didn't accidentally eat any fish or crab, right?" I shook my head. "No!" He laughed again and casually leaned his elbow on Liu Ryan's shoulder. "You see, Ryan was so focused on making seafood for me, she forgot to cook something you could eat." Hearing this, Liu Ryan smiled too. "Stop being cheeky. I'm taking care of you, so hurry up and eat while it's hot." "All right, as you wish." When I came here, I couldn't get a plane ticket because the plan was so rushed. So I spent over 10 hours on the high-speed train. But the thought of seeing Liu Ryan soon kept me from feeling tired. However, after actually meeting her, an unexpected fatigue crept into my heart. I endured my hunger, watching as Liu Ryan and Yiming casually picked food for each other, leaning in close as they ate. I sat there, an outsider. After the meal ended, Yiming showed no intention of leaving. So I asked Liu Ryan, Are you two living together? Yiming shrugged and nodded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. My heart tightened. Liu Ryan smiled softly. Her eyes filled with affection as she gazed at Yiming. Yes, Aming is living here, alone, and I can't stop worrying about him. Plus, his lease ended, so he's staying here, since I have space. So I let him move in. It's better this way, we can look after each other. Yiming pinched Liu Ryan's cheek playfully, then sighed softly. Honestly, it's a bit embarrassing. I'm already this grown up, and I still can't live without Ryan taking care of me. Sigh, it feels like being stuck in a gentle trap. I just can't break free. In today's world, there aren't many girls like Ryan who don't ask for anything, yet still give so selflessly. Brother Joe, don't you think so? I stayed silent. Liu Ryan chuckled and gently pushed him. Stop being so cheeky. After their playful banter, Liu Ryan glanced at the clock, then looked at me with some hesitation. Chen Yi, it's getting late. I'll take you back to the hotel. Looking down at the suitcase she handed to me, I pushed it away and asked in a deep voice, Liu Ryan, have you forgotten who your boyfriend really is? From the moment I arrived in this city, the first time I saw you, Ryan, she was holding Yiming's hand. She remembered all of Yiming's favorite foods. They fed each other in front of me as if I wasn't even there. She's even been living with him in the apartment I bought for her, without me knowing. And now, she's trying to send me away. I felt like the person who traveled all this way, carrying flowers, waiting outside her door for 2 hours, had become nothing more than a joke. But in reality, all the signs were there. After graduation, Liu Ryan was unwilling to stay in our hometown after graduation. She insisted on moving far away to the city, no matter what. At that time, a mutual friend had warned me, telling me that Liu Ryan's first love, Yiming, was starting a business here, and advised me to be cautious. But I didn't want to let such baseless doubts stand in the way of Liu Ryan's choices. I gave her my full support. I thought that distance wouldn't be an obstacle on the path of our relationship. But Liu Ryan gradually became colder towards me. She even started making excuses to avoid our daily video calls. Especially in the past month, she frequently used work as an excuse to cut off contact. We had already reached the point of discussing marriage. We were originally supposed to meet each other's parents during the Mid-Autumn Festival. But on the day of the festival, Liu Ryan became unreachable, leaving me awkwardly alone with my parents, facing a table full of dishes we had prepared for her. The next day, she finally called to apologize, brushing it off with the excuse of some last-minute work assigned by her boss. And then, as if nothing had happened, she began discussing our plans for the National Day holiday. 2 days ago, as expected, she broke her promise once again, casually canceling the travel plans I had stayed up late making, based entirely on her preferences. Though I was deeply disappointed, I still agreed, because I knew how focused she was on her career. Coming from a poor background, she was determined to prove herself. Thus, this time, I took the initiative to come to Liu Ryan's city. Unexpectedly, I was completely caught off guard by the reality in front of me. Hearing what I said, Liu Ryan's face immediately turned cold. Zhou Chengyi, what do you mean by that? Suppressing the bitterness in my heart, I spoke lightly. You and Yiming, just the two of you alone, in the house I bought for you. Yet you made me stay in a hotel. Liu Ryan, don't you think that's going too far? Once upon a time, in order to avoid being separated from Liu Ryan, I mentioned transferring my job here to stay with her. But Liu Ryan sternly refused. At that time, she was very adamant, saying, Cheng Yi, we are at the age where we need to focus on our careers. Work should come first. Besides, I'm so busy with my job. And since we don't live together, even if you transfer here, how often would we really see each other? Liu Ryan firmly opposed cohabitation before marriage. Whenever we went on dates, no matter how late it was, she would insist I take her home, no matter the distance. Even if, after dropping her off, I wouldn't get home until almost dawn, she would never let me stay over. She would always lecture me earnestly. We're just dating, not married. You need to understand boundaries. In this, I chose to respect her. After all, everyone has their own principles, so I never forced it. But what I never expected was that Liu Ryan's so-called firm principles. Yet in front of Yiming, her so-called principles were so easily broken. Shattered. Upon hearing my question, Liu Ryan became completely furious. She glared at me, her eyes cold and venomous, as if she wanted to devour me. Zhou Chengyi, are you doubting me? Yiming and I have done nothing wrong. So stop with your filthy thoughts. Yes, this house was bought by you. But did I ever beg you to buy it for me? And besides, as my boyfriend, isn't it only natural for you to buy me a house? Since you've gone so far with your words, then I'll just leave. With that, Liu Ryan made a show of packing her things. Yiming hurriedly stopped her, gently comforting her. Ryan, calm down. Don't get upset. Then he turned to me, with an air of arrogance saying, Brother Joe, aren't you blowing things out of proportion a little? Ryan and I have known each other for years. We're like family. Describing us as a man and woman alone together seems a bit excessive. After saying that, he snorted coldly and continued comforting Liu Ryan. Seeing Yiming, Liu Ryan's emotions seemed to calm down a little. Zhou Chengyi, come outside. Liu Ryan pulled me far away, finally stopping under a streetlight. Her attitude softened. Her eyes fluttered, forcing out a few tears. I couldn't believe it. In just a matter of minutes, her demeanor had changed so drastically. Chengyi, do you have some misunderstanding about me? But despite this, you still shouldn't say such hurtful things to me. I was a bit surprised. If we're talking about hurtful things, Liu Ryan, isn't your behavior even more hurtful? She sobbed, speaking intermittently. I clearly haven't done anything out of line. It's all a misunderstanding. You have no idea why I let Yiming move in. There's a reason. He recently failed in his business venture, and it was a huge blow to him. He was in such a bad mental state. He couldn't even afford his rent. Yiming and I grew up together in the same place. I didn't come from a wealthy family. If it hadn't been for Yiming being by my side, always encouraging me, I wouldn't have made it this far. So when he faced such hardship, there's no way I could just sit back and do nothing. I had no choice but to let him stay temporarily. Chengyi, you understand me, don't you? Tears hung on Liu Ryan's face, and she looked at me with pleading eyes. Seeing that I remained silent, she raised her hand and swore, I know it was my fault for not telling you about this in advance. That was my oversight. Don't worry, I'll ask Yiming to move out tonight. I was doubtful. Really? Liu Ryan nodded, speaking with determination. I promise. But at that moment, I truly didn't know whether I could believe her anymore. Liu Ryan continued to act coy, gently pushing me into a hotel, softly saying, Chengyi, rest here for tonight and get some proper sleep. Tomorrow, I'll take you out for something delicious. Before I could respond, she smiled, gave me a quick kiss, and immediately left. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Early the next morning, I knocked on the door of the apartment again. Yiming, who was supposed to have moved out the night before, appeared before me wearing nothing but shorts, groggy from sleep. A band-aid was sloppily stuck at the corner of his mouth, as if trying to cover something up. When Yiming saw it was me, his brows immediately furrowed. Annoyed, he said, Brother Joe, It's not very nice to disturb someone's sleep so early in the morning. As he spoke, he started pulling the door shut again. I could no longer suppress the rage boiling inside me, and I shoved him aside, storming into the apartment. The bedroom door was wide open. Liu Ryan was hurriedly slipping into a camisole nightgown, but it couldn't hide the large red marks on her neck. Cheney, why are you here again? Didn't I tell you I would come to see you today? Her eyes were evasive, and her hands were discreetly trying to tuck something under the pillow. I grabbed her arm, yanking her off the bed. Scattered across the floor were Yi Ming's clothes. The bedsheets were a crumpled mess, as if bearing witness to everything that had happened there the night before. They weren't just cohabiting. They had shared the same bed. Yi Ming rushed over and shoved me aside, shielding Liu Ryan behind him. Pointing at my nose, he cursed viciously. Zhou Chenyi, I tolerated you before out of respect for Liu Ryan, but I didn't expect you to go even further, forcefully dragging her in front of me. Are you even a man? The more he spoke, the angrier he became. Get out of here now, or else. The one who should be leaving is you, I reminded him. Have you forgotten? This house was bought by me. Get out now. You! Yi Ming was infuriated, and in his shame and anger, he tried to attack me. The moment his fist swung toward me, I quickly grabbed his wrist, and then punched him hard in the face. He collapsed to the floor, clutching his nose in pain. Unable to utter a single word, I pointed toward the door, my fingers trembling uncontrollably. Get out of here right now. Get out! Liu Ryan stumbled as she helped Yi Ming up, her eyes blazing with fury. She screamed at me. Zhou Chenyi, are you out of your mind? How could you just hit someone like that? If you're really sick, go get help. But stop causing a scene here. I looked at Liu Ryan, feeling as if my heart had been shattered into a million pieces. Yes, I am sick. I angrily threw the men's pajamas in my hand, straight at Liu Ryan's face. Liu Ryan, only a madman would let you manipulate them and still keep tolerating it. Yesterday, I almost believed your lies. I even thought I was overthinking things. Now it seems I've been far too naive about you too. Liu Ryan, your shamelessness truly opened my eyes. Liu Ryan had never heard me speak to her so harshly before. Now, she couldn't refute it. She just bit her lower lip and stared at me stubbornly. But after a moment, she regained her previous confidence and even looked at me with a hint of disappointment in her eyes. With a trembling voice, Liu Ryan asked, "So is this why you came here so early this morning? You've been doubting me and Yi Ming all along. Zhou Chenyi, if that's what you've been thinking from the start, why didn't you just say it outright? Why make such a scene? You're so hypocritical. I could hardly believe it." At this point in this situation, Liu Ryan was still trying to turn the tables on me, blaming me for not trusting her enough. I closed my eyes for a second and coldly asked, "So do you think I've wronged you, Liu Ryan? Is that really the point?" She retorted sharply, "Zhou Chenyi, the moment you started doubting me, our trust was already over. I'm very disappointed in you now. You should go back and think about it." She opened the door, signaling for me to leave. Yi Ming wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, stood up, and added, "Zhou Chenyi, this time, for Liu Ryan's sake, I'll let it slide. I'll let it go this time. But don't let it happen again. Now get out. And don't show your face around us anytime soon." I clenched my fists and slowly walked up to Yi Ming. His bravado instantly faded, and he backed away nervously. Stammering, he asked, What are you going to do?" I kicked his clothes on the floor. "Didn't you hear what I said? I told you to get out right now. Zhou Chenyi." Liu Ryan suddenly stepped in, pulling Yi Ming behind her, and whispered a warning. Yiming has already been gracious enough not to press charges for what you did today. Don't push your luck. I chuckled coldly, calmly staring at Liu Ryan. She just glared back at me, her eyes full of disgust. All these years, I had poured my heart and soul into her, giving her everything I could. But this was what I got in return. I sighed deeply, fixing my gaze on Liu Ryan, and spoke slowly. I was so focused on getting rid of him, I forgot to get rid of you. Liu Ryan, we're breaking up. You and him can both get out. Liu Ryan had her phone out, ready to call the police. But after hearing what I said, she froze completely. She looked up at me in disbelief. Zhou Chenyi, what did you just say? First, we're breaking up. Second, get out. I repeated, but Liu Ryan clearly thought I was joking. She let out a cold laugh. Are you trying to use some reverse psychology on me? I didn't waste a single word, and mercilessly kicked Liu Ryan and Yiming out of the house. The commotion quickly drew a crowd of onlookers from the surrounding neighborhood. Yiming, who had been hurling insults at me moments ago, immediately changed his approach. When he saw all the people watching, his hand trembled as he pointed at me. Then he clutched his chest and collapsed to the ground, feigning agony. Liu Ryan screamed, rushing to support Yiming, frantically slapping his face, asking anxiously, Ming, don't faint. What's wrong with you? Wake up. The crowd started whispering among themselves. Liu Ryan shouted at them, stop staring. Why hasn't anyone called an ambulance yet? Then, she shot me a furious glare, screaming hysterically, Zhou Chenyi, do you really have to be so heartless? Look at what you've done to Yiming. If anything happens to him, I will never let you off. I sneered, stepping forward and kicking Yiming. Stop pretending. If you're going to die, don't do it at my doorstep. It's bad luck. Liu Ryan looked at me coldly, her voice chilling as she said, Zhou Chenyi, do you think everyone is as hypocritical and dramatic as you? Do you even know that some conditions, when triggered, can be fatal? At that moment, an elderly woman pushed her way through the crowd, pointing at Liu Ryan. Hey, Liu, what happened to your boyfriend? Why is he lying on the ground? Liu Ryan's eyes lit up when she saw the elderly woman, as if she had found a lifeline. She quickly pulled her over to Yiming's side, urgently saying, Grandma Zhang, please check Yiming's pulse. He got upset earlier and his heart hurt. Then he fainted right after. The old lady calmly placed her hand on Yiming's wrist, and then, confused, she said, that's strange. His pulse seems strong. He's fine. How could he suddenly faint? Liu Ryan looked at her with dissatisfaction. Grandma Zhang, you're from a family of traditional Chinese medicine, which is why I asked you to check Yiming's pulse. And now you're telling me nothing's wrong with him? How could he faint if nothing's wrong? The old lady was immediately displeased by this comment, her face tightening as she prepared to argue with Liu Ryan. But before she could say a word, a loud siren blared as an ambulance pulled up. Two paramedics stepped out and loaded Yiming onto the stretcher. Liu Ryan got in the ambulance with them. But before she left, she turned to me with a look of disdain and said, Zhou Chenyi, don't think you're above everyone else just because you have a little money. We, people at the bottom, may not have much worth, but that doesn't mean you can trample all over us. As I watched Liu Ryan ride away in the ambulance, all I felt after the release of it all was a deep, overwhelming sense of sorrow. It turns out that Liu Ryan has always seen me this way. I met Liu Ryan during our university days. Back then, we both belonged to the School of Design, but I didn't have a deep impression of her at the time, because she was very quiet. So quiet, in fact, that it bordered on being reclusive. She was always alone, coming and going by herself. But later, as if by some unspoken agreement, I started running into her everywhere on campus. sometimes in the cafeteria, sometimes at the milk tea shop, and sometimes even at the convenience store. She would always appear in these places, working part-time, facing Liu Ryan back then. I even found myself admiring her. A girl, how could she have such boundless energy, managing both school and part-time jobs, day and night without rest? But during that time, my feelings towards Liu Ryan were only limited to curiosity till that afternoon. At that moment, I was practicing sketching by the lakeside on campus when I heard soft sobbing from behind a large tree. To be honest, my first instinct was to leave. But before I could, I heard Liu Ryan's voice on the phone. She was arguing fiercely with someone on the other end. It turned out that Liu Ryan's parents weren't from the area, and they didn't have much exposure to the world. They thought that her attending school here was just a waste of money. They kept urging her to return home and get married. Otherwise, they threatened to cut off all her financial support. But Liu Ryan was adamant about not dropping out. After hanging up the phone, she sat alone under the tree, crying for a long, long time. At that moment, I finally understood why Liu Ryan was always working at various part-time jobs around campus. She was fighting with everything she had just to secure a better future for herself. I was amazed by the sheer tenacity that she embodied and deeply moved by it. That evening, I went to see our academic advisor. I decided to help Liu Ryan anonymously, providing financial support so she could smoothly finish university. After a few months of this support, one day, Liu Ryan unexpectedly invited me to dinner. In fact, before that meal, I had a feeling she might have found out something about the situation. And sure enough, after we sat down, Liu Ryan handed me an IOU. Her face flushed red, and she stammered, "Joe, I know everything about the support you've been giving me. Thank you for helping me from behind the scenes. Please take this IOU. I'll make sure to repay you in the future." I couldn't help but laugh at how shy and formal she was being. I quickly pushed the IOU back to her, explaining, "You don't need to feel so pressured about this. Let's just continue being regular classmates, and you don't need to repay the money." Really, that day, despite all her efforts, Liu Ryan couldn't manage to give me that IOU. But after that, she started bringing me breakfast regularly. She would quietly wait while I played basketball, just to hand me water after the game. And so, through these little moments together, we gradually became more familiar, until eventually we ended up together. After we started dating, I understood even more about how hard Liu Ryan's life had been. It turned out her family situation was far worse than I had imagined. It was also around that time that I learned about the existence of Yiming. Yiming had grown up with Liu Ryan. They were childhood friends, and he was also her first love. Liu Ryan told me that when she was struggling and in a difficult place, Yiming had helped her. So, even though they had broken up, they were still friends, like family, and it made sense to her to stay in touch. I believed her, so I didn't question it much. It wasn't until long after that I realized the financial support Liu Ryan had received from me. She had actually given part of it to Yiming. Since several years had already passed, I never brought it up again with Liu Ryan, fearing it would touch on a sensitive topic for her. Yes, when it came to money, Liu Ryan had always been sensitive. Even after we started dating, I continued to respect her, care for her, and carefully protect her pride. But Liu Ryan would often bring up the difference in our family backgrounds, insisting that I didn't truly understand the struggles of someone from her kind of upbringing. Sometimes this topic would even lead to arguments between us. Out of compassion for Liu Ryan's unfortunate circumstances, I would always let things go and be patient with her. Liu Ryan was fiercely ambitious. She was determined to prove her self-worth through her career. After graduation, she resolutely decided to move to the city she's in now to fight for her dreams. Even though I wasn't sure what made this city any different, I silently continued to be Liu Ryan's support system. I bought her a house here and asked a friend to introduce her to a local design company with great prospects. But only now do I realize the real reason Liu Ryan came to this city was because of Yiming. No matter how much I did for her, I was just a stepping stone on her path to success. Just a wealthy heir she secretly despised for my materialistic background. Someone she could easily manipulate. A so-called boyfriend in name only. I hired two cleaners to wipe away every trace of Liu Ryan and Yiming from this apartment. But no matter how spotless it was, the place still didn't feel right to me. After giving it some thought, I figured it might be best to sell the place altogether. I called Shenzhou, a family friend of ours for generations. His family had been developing in this city in recent years, and it was him whom I had asked to help Liu Ryan find her job. When we sat down at the cafe, I told Shenzhou everything that had happened over the past few days. After hearing my story, Shenzhou was furious. He emphasized, "Chen Yi, you've definitely been deceived by Liu Ryan. All that talk about working overtime. That company she works for is known for its great benefits and never requires overtime, especially not on public holidays." Honestly, he didn't even need to mention it. I had already started to suspect as much. You know how it is when you're too close to a situation to see clearly. It wasn't until I stepped back, viewing the relationship from an outsider's perspective, that I realized how foolish and slow I had been. It was almost laughable. Shenzhou probed further. "Chen Yi, there's actually something else I've been hesitant to tell you. It's about Liu Ryan. The leadership at her company has been giving me feedback that she's been slacking off at work, leaving abruptly after every phone call. And now I think that person on the other end of the line was probably Yiming. With the way she's been coming in late and leaving early, if it weren't for my connections, she would have been fired several times over by now." I cleared my throat and said seriously, "Joe, Liu Ryan and I have already broken up. You don't need to keep sparing her. If she's not qualified for the position, just follow company policy and let her go." Shenzhou gave me an approving nod. "All right, we'll leave it at that. Let's move on to the main topic. Joe, the real reason I came to see you this time is that I want to sell this apartment. I originally bought it for Liu Ryan's convenience with her job, but I never imagined it would turn into a place for her and Yiming to have their affair. Now, keeping this apartment just feels revolting to me. Besides, I have no plans to develop my career in this city. I might as well sell off this place of heartache." "Sure, that's easy enough." Shenzhou agreed without hesitation. "I know a few real estate agents who can help you sell it quickly." As Shenzhou scrolled through his contacts, his eyes suddenly lit up. "Hey, Chen Yi, I just remembered something. I have a cousin who's looking to buy a place here. Why not sell it directly to her? We can do it at the original price you bought it for." "All right, that works." I nodded in agreement. The price doesn't matter much to me. I just want to sell it as soon as possible. To be honest, I had been planning to transfer the ownership of this apartment to Liu Ryan a long time ago, but she always found some excuse, either working late or being too busy with work, and kept putting it off. So the matter was left unresolved. Now the apartment is still in my name, and every time I see it, it annoys me. All I want is to get rid of this burden and sever all ties with the past. After saying goodbye to Shenzhou and returning home, I noticed a lot of missed calls on my phone. They were all from Liu Ryan, since I hadn't picked up. She had also sent me several WeChat messages. "Zhou Qi, Yiming has woken up. The doctor diagnosed him with low blood sugar, which is why he fainted, though it's not a serious condition. He can't handle any more stress. I thought about it carefully after coming back. Maybe your impulsiveness today was because you care too much about me, which is why you made that mistake. To a certain extent, your actions are understandable, but you can't take it too far. Do you know what I mean? For example, you actually hit Yiming. That was crossing the line. Of course, I spoke up for you in front of Yiming. Here's the deal. Come over now, apologize to Yiming, and buy him some supplements. We can just pretend nothing ever happened. Joe Cheney, pick up the phone. Avoiding this won't solve anything. The only thing you can do now is come and admit you were wrong. Hurry up. Time is running out. As I read through these ridiculous messages, my phone rang again. It was Liu Ryan. Out of reflex, I pressed the answer button. The next second, Liu Ryan's urgent accusations poured out over the phone. Joe Cheney, I've called you so many times. Why haven't you answered even once? Do you think disappearing like this and making people worrying is funny? Was she really worrying about me? How laughable. Calmly, I responded, Liu Ryan, if you have something to say, just say it. This time, Liu Ryan didn't care about my attitude, because she had more pressing concerns. I just got a call from my department manager. She said the company is going to fire me. What's going on? Go ask Shen Zhou right now. After all, it was him who introduced me to this job. Now I'm getting fired for no reason. And he has to take responsibility. Liu Ryan angrily demanded, her frustration evident. Suddenly, something seemed to cross her mind. Her tone changed abruptly. Forget it. I don't even care about this lousy company anymore. But go ahead and contact your friends to help me find a few more companies. I need to carefully choose my next move. However, I won't let this company off the hook so easily. They have to take full responsibility. Go find me 2 lawyers. I want to file for labor arbitration. If they don't pay me a hefty compensation, I won't leave quietly. Joe Cheney, why aren't you saying anything? Have you lost your voice? You need to take care of this right away. Understand? I'm not letting this go so easily. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, but are you also forcing me to go apologize to Yiming immediately? Liu Ryan paused, then said, you call the lawyers first, and then come straight to the hospital after. I couldn't believe it. Liu Ryan had become so efficient at ordering me around. Well, after all these years, this must be the only value I had left in her eyes. I'm not going. I rejected her flatly. Then I reminded her, Liu Ryan, we've already broken up. If you need a lawyer, hire one yourself. But just so you know, you were fired for your own negligence. Even if you hire a lawyer, it'll be a waste of time. After saying this, I ignored her angry outbursts on the other end of the line and hung up. Maybe it's because I had already become numb to everything related to Liu Ryan, but I was able to make this decision so decisively, ready to move on, right after I blocked Liu Ryan's contact information. A friend request popped up on WeChat. It was Shen Zhou's cousin, Byran. Actually, I had met Byran when she was very young, since we're both from the same hometown, and now living in the same city. It seemed like fate had brought us together again. That night, I had a long conversation with Byran. The next day, she asked to meet in person to discuss the details about the apartment. I brought Byran over to tour the place. She was quite pleased with the overall layout and lighting. Curiously, Byran asked, Joe, this apartment is really nice. Why are you in such a hurry to sell it? I didn't hide anything. I told her the truth about the situation. Byran wrinkled her nose, slightly disgusted. That's pretty unsettling. But she quickly brushed it off. No worries. Once I take over, I'll have this place completely renovated and cleaned for 3 days straight before moving in. I laughed at her remark. We left the apartment, laughing and chatting, planning to grab some lunch together. Unexpectedly, as we opened the door, we were met by an enraged Liu Ryan. She pointed at me and shouted, Zhou Chenyi, no wonder you insisted on breaking up with me. Turns out you've already found someone new. How disgusting. To timing like this. I snapped back. Liu Ryan. This is my friend. Show some respect. Liu Ryan scoffed. A friend? I bet she's just some shameless mistress. Byran, stepping forward, challenged her directly. Who do you think you are talking like that? Facing Liu Ryan's deliberate provocation, Byran had no intention of backing down. But before any of us could react, Liu Ryan suddenly grabbed a fistful of Byran's hair and followed it with a vicious slap across her face. Byran let out a sharp scream of pain, but Liu Ryan continued to hold onto her hair, showing no signs of stopping. Liu Ryan, are you out of your mind? I quickly pried her fingers open and pushed her away, stepping in front of Byran to shield her. Liu Ryan's eyes immediately welled up with tears. She stared at me in disbelief. Zhou Chenyi, you actually pushed me away for another woman? How could you do this to me? After making sure Byran was alright, I spoke coldly. Liu Ryan, we've already broken up. She is just my friend. Stop acting irrationally. Byran gripped my arm tightly. Zhou, stop wasting words with her. Let's just call the police. Alright, I said, pulling out my phone and dialing 110. Liu Ryan stood there, stunned, watching in disbelief as I made the call. She seemed completely shaken, her lips trembling uncontrollably. Zhou Chenyi, are you really going to call the police and have me arrested? She pointed furiously at Byran. For this woman, you're going to send me to jail? Chenyi, do you not love me anymore? I let out a bitter laugh. Liu Ryan, before you ask that question, I said it with a touch of self-mockery. Think about everything you've done. Please think about everything you've done first. The police car arrived quickly. After we explained the situation to the officers, Liu Ryan didn't offer a single word in rebuttal. She was quietly escorted into the police car. Throughout the whole process, she kept looking at me with an expression of disbelief, her eyes filled with pain. But as for Liu Ryan's tears, I chose to ignore them. After all, night after night, she had treated me in the same way. This major disruption during the house selling process made Byran feel a bit fearful of this city. She sighed and said, Zhou, I've realized there are far too many bizarre people in a strange city like this. Maybe going back home is better. In the end, after some discussion between the two of us, we decided to list the apartment on a housing platform and wait for someone fated to come along. After wrapping up the situation here, Byran and I took the same flight back to Haikang. To make up for the inconvenience, I invited Byran out for dinner once we got back, just to relax. Since Byran knew my parents through Shenzhou, I decided to invite her to our home as well. During dinner, I noticed that Byran behaved very politely and sensibly, the type of girl parents would really like. Both sets of parents subtly, or not so subtly, seemed to be encouraging a relationship between us. And in the short time we spent together, I started to see the potential for something more with Byran. Byran and I were getting along exceptionally well, and I had plans to continue seeing her. 2 weeks later, after work one day, I was planning to pick up Byran for a shopping trip. But unexpectedly, when I got downstairs from the office, I saw Liu Ryan. Whether it was from spending a few days in detention or something else, she looked completely worn out. The moment she saw me, she dropped to her knees in front of me with a thud. I was startled by her sudden action. Instinctively stepping back. Liu Ryan, what are you doing? Her face was soaked in tears as she sobbed. Chenyi, please don't leave me. I understand everything now. I know you're seeing that other woman, and that you're planning to get married. You can't do this to me. You once promised that you would never marry anyone but me. Liu Ryan cried with such intensity that it was as if she had been submerged in water. I've really thought it through this time. She continued, you're the only one who truly cares about me. Yiming has been deceiving me all along. He only stayed close to me because he wanted my money. He kept saying he wanted to start a business and that he was working hard to improve himself. But in reality, he just used that as an excuse to keep asking me for more money. He even treated me like a servant, ordering me around. How could I have been so stupid? Hurting you with cruel words over a freeloader like him? Tears streamed down her face as she begged, Cheney, please give me another chance. You're the one I truly love. Without you, I really don't know how I'll keep on living. She cried as she clung tightly to my legs, tears streaming uncontrollably. I bent down, prying her fingers off one by one. Liu Ryan, you don't love me. What you love is someone who can always provide for you without asking for anything in return, like an endless ATM. But unfortunately, that person has already been pushed away by your own hands. I have my own life now. Go! Don't come looking for me anymore. You can't do this. Liu Ryan screamed in pain. Joe Cheney, are you still mad about what happened that morning? But I swear, nothing really happened between me and Yi Ming. We didn't go all the way. Please believe me. As she spoke, she took off her jacket, revealing the red marks on her chest. Marks she had scrubbed raw. I've washed it all off. I've erased all the traces. Please, just give me one more chance. Her eyes stayed locked on mine, hoping to see any sign of sympathy. But there was none. I sighed and said coldly, none of this matters to me anymore. Liu Ryan, take care of yourself. With a thud, she collapsed onto the ground, wailing uncontrollably, no longer caring about her appearance. But I didn't look back, walking straight to my car and pulling onto the main road. In the distance, Byran was waiting for me. I had finally let go of all the pain from my past, and I was fully prepared to embrace someone new, a new life.